Hi guys, welcome to Azure Content. This is part 12 in Azure Synapse Analytics Real-Time Scenarios playlist. In this video, we are going to learn how to perform Upsert using Azure Synapse Pipelines. So let's see what we are going to learn as a part of this video. So we will learn what is Upsert technique and how to merge the tables using this technique in Azure Synapse Analytics. Okay. So what is Upsert? Basically, Upsert means update plus insert. So let me give you a simple example to make you understand about this concept. So suppose we have source and a sink, and we have already done one full load from source to sink, and after that we have identified that there is incremental records. Okay, so let me highlight these records which are going to be acting as incremental records. So you can see these two records got modified after the first full load. Okay, so if you have watched my previous video, you must be knowing about the concept of benchmark value. Okay, so here this concept of benchmark field and benchmark value. So in this table, what is the benchmark field? Any timestamp value which identifies the when the row got inserted or updated is considered as benchmark field. So in this case, modified date is the benchmark field. So we have to identify what is the maximum of modified date which we will treat it as benchmark value. So in this case, maximum of modified date in the target is this one. So this is the benchmark value. So now it compares with the source. Wherever there is a modified date which has greater value than this benchmark value will be identified as incremental record. So these two are having greater value than this benchmark value. So these two will be considered as incremental record. But now the problem arises that how to identify which one of these is existing record and which one is the newly inserted record. So what we need to introduce now is the concept of key columns. Okay, so there's something called key column. What it means is any column or the combination of columns that we can use to uniquely identify each row. Okay, so in this case, ID column can be seen as the primary key because each row has different and unique ID associated with it, right? So we can treat ID column as the key column. Okay, and we can also treat combination of columns as the key column on the basis of which it will perform the merge between these two tables. Okay, so we can also give composite key, and we can either give primary key, that is ID, or we can give composite key. Composite key means the combination of multiple columns, okay, that can uniquely identify each row. So we can also give ID plus name as the composite column which will represent the key column. Okay, for now, for simplicity, let me give only ID. So what it will do is it will check between these two incremental records. It will take the ID equals to 2. It will compare it with the sync. If ID equals to 2 is already present, then it will take the whole record and perform the update. Okay, if the ID is already present, it will perform update. Now the same thing, it will check for ID equals to 5. If the ID is not present, what it will do, it will take the entire record and perform insert. Okay, so this is how upsert works. So if it identifies that the ID column is already present, then it performs update. If it is not present, then it performs insert. Okay, so this is the simple thing. So we will start implementing this concept in practical. So first thing we need to do is we need to add this key column in our control table. Okay, so where is our control table? It is present in our Azure SQL database. So here we can see there are 3 active records, 3 tables that needs to be copied. We have already performed one full load for these 3 tables and then one incremental load in our previous video. Okay, but if you remember in our previous video, when we performed incremental, we didn't apply this concept of upsert, due to which there are few duplicates present in our sink, that is in our dedicated SQL pool. Okay, so we will perform one full load in this video also. So before doing that, let me alter the table and add that key column. Okay, let me alter table control dot metadata and key column. Okay, which will be of type, suppose varchar, let me give 50. Okay, so now this will hold our key columns. So we have this newly added column. So for each tables we have to identify what is the key column. So let me go to the source. So this is our source, AdventureWorks database, and here we can see for this table it seems contact type ID is unique for each record, so we can treat this as key column. Similarly for this one, business entity ID seems to be a key column. Similarly for this one, this unit measure code seems to be unique for each row. Okay, let's first add one column for each of the tables as the key column. Then in later part of this video we will try to do the same thing using composite key, that is combination of two columns. Okay, so let me just go here and update control dot metadata set key column for each of the tables. Okay, so for the first table it is contact type ID. So let me do contact type ID where table underscore name equals to contact type. Okay, one row affected. So you can see this has been updated. Now same thing we need to do for other tables. Salesperson, so we identify business entity ID as the primary key, right? So let me do that, business entity ID for salesperson. Similarly for the third table, unit measure, we need to give unit measure code, right? Unit measure code, yeah. So we will give unit measure code as the key column. So we are done with the updates of key column. Now as I told, we will perform one full load because in our sync, if you remember from our previous video, we have some duplicates. So let me update control.metadata table and set incremental flag equals to n for these active tables so that we can perform one full load, okay, before doing the Upsert thing. And after this full load will be completed from the pipeline side, I want this incremental flag to be automatically updated to Y because the next loads will be incremental load. Okay, so for that I don't want to do manually update for each time. So what we will do is after the full load, let me go to the pipeline and make this small change. We should have done it in our previous video, but I missed this one. So let me while updating the benchmark value, let me update the incremental flag as well to Y. Okay, so that for each time we don't need to manually do that. So after this, set benchmark value equals to this, comma, I am giving set incremental flag equals to Y. Okay, so now we have already let me update this one here. So we have updated this incremental flag to n, and after this full load will be completed, it will automatically turn these flags to Y again. Okay, so let's do a full load in our dedicated SQL pool. So after that we will implement this Upsert concept. Okay, so I hope you get the point why I'm doing this full load, because in our previous video, if you watched, we have some duplicates in our sync. So when we do this full load, what it will do is, if you see this false condition which is going to do the full load in this copy activity, before loading the data, it is going to truncate the table. So because of this, it will remove those duplicates and it will have the same data that we have in our source. Okay, so let's wait for this to come. So by looking at this activity name, you can identify if it is running incremental or full load. Okay, so here it is copy data 1, metadata 1 that we have in here, copy data 1, metadata, these things. But in case of incremental, it is underscore incremental in all of our activities. So that means it is performing a full load. So here you can see this lookup query is having incremental flag Y also. Okay, so we have accommodated this change here, and we don't need to manually update the incremental flag each time. Okay, So the pipeline execution is completed. Let's check the control table now. This should be updated to Y, and full load would have been completed. So you can see this is updated to Y, and in our dedicated SQL pool, one full load is completed. So the data looks good. It is similar to what we have in our source. Okay. Now we will perform incremental load, right? So we will prepare the data from the source. We will have some incremental records. We will try to insert and update a few records in the source, and then we will try to implement the Upsert concept and run the pipeline to view the changes are reflecting or not. But before that, I want to cover one concept. So whenever we create the table using the auto create option in our copy activity, so how are we creating this table? It is automatically getting created, right? We are not writing any create table statements. It is automatically doing it by this option. Table option is auto create. So when we do this in our Synapse data warehouse or in our dedicated SQL pool, what happens is, let me go to the sync. Let me refresh this. So if we check the schema of tables present in source and sync, there will be difference. It would be different. So here, let me go to the source. Here you can see the name column is having data type as nvarchar 50. Other columns are fine, it is integer and date time, but the name column is nvarchar 50 there, and in the sync it has been changed to nvarchar max. So what happens is, wherever there is a string type of column, nvarchar or varchar type of column, it gets automatically changed. The size would be changed to max. Okay. Why this happens is, when we use this auto create option, all the string type of columns gets created with data type as nvarchar max. Okay. So when we implement this Upsert concept, we need to change this to a fixed length. We cannot keep it as nvarchar max, else it will throw error. Okay, we will alter this data type from nvarchar max to a fixed length. So instead of performing alter table, how could we avoid this creation of nvarchar maxes? We can manually create the table and then perform the copy activity by using this none option. This is one of the solutions, or else we could have created external table and that would have the same schema as that in the source, and then we could have copied from external table to the physical table. So we will not go that long way. Let me just do alter table for now. Alter table, then alter column. Alter column name is name, and what data type we need is nvarchar, suppose 100. Okay, so let me alter this. Okay, so similarly I'll check for other two tables. If there is any nvarchar max field, we will alter that. Okay, let me write alter table for both. Alter table sales, not salesperson as well. Okay, so here for production.unit measure, there are two fields which has nvarchar max data type, unit measure code and name. Okay, so let me alter those two. Alter column, unit measure code, this we will keep as nvarchar, suppose 10. Okay, then name, right, nvarchar, we will give nvarchar 100. So we have done it for production.unit measure. Similarly we will do for sales.salesperson. If we have any nvarchar max field, you can see row grid is nvarchar max. We will give nvarchar 100. Okay, so now we have changed our columns to a fixed length of column so that Upsert works. Okay, so now let's go to the pipeline and apply the Upsert concept. So where we need to apply this? In the place of incremental load, right? because in full load anyways it will truncate the table and load the full data from source to sink. So we don't need to perform any upsert or update or insert. Okay, so in case of incremental load, when we will have few records as the incremental records, then we need to identify if it is if it is an existing or a new record, and then we need to perform update, or else we need to perform insert. So we need to do all these things in the true block where we are performing this incremental load. Okay, so here we are having, if the incremental flag is y, then it will go inside true block where we are doing this incremental load. So in the last copy activity where we are loading the data to our SQL pool that is acting as our target database, so here instead of using copy command or polybase or bulk insert, we can use upsert. Okay, so this is a simple way of implementing the upsert concept. Else we could have created a stored procedure to merge the tables as well. So if Synapse or ADF is giving us the option to use this upsert, then why not we do it without code and use the UI itself to perform upsert. Okay, so we are going to use this upsert. Okay, so once we clicked on upsert, you could see that the options have changed. Okay, here you can see we need to use some DB schema. Here we have to select the schema of the table on which we need to perform the upsert. Okay, so in our case it is not a single table, right? It is there are multiple tables, and dynamically we are fetching the table name and schema name. So similarly we will fetch the schema name dynamically here, item dot table underscore schema. Okay, either we can use the same schema, or you can create new schemas by giving underscore stg or something. Okay, but I'm using the same schema to perform upsert, and here we need to give that key columns what we have created in our control table. Okay, so how we will pass that? So if we would have used this copy activity only for one table, we could have selected these columns directly from here. Okay, but in our case we are doing that dynamically. So here let me add dynamic content and give item dot key column that will come from our control table. Now there is a catch. This key column we have stored in the form of string, right? And here also we are passing it as the form of string. We are not converting it to any other data type. So let's just run this pipeline as this, and then we will see in which format these key columns will accept the column name. So before running the pipeline, let me prepare the incremental data from the source so that we can see if the correct data is getting copied or not. Okay, so I have already kept some data handy. Let me insert and update it in the source. So currently these data are not present in our sync. If you see, the last data is sales representative 1 in contact type. So let me insert this sales representative 2 with this date. Okay, one row got affected. So similarly for salesperson, I am doing a update for business entity 276. So here the last modified date is 21 June and row grid is C1 at the end. So I'm altering it and updating to the new value with C3, and last modified date is also the latest date. So that is done. So similarly for production.unit measure, there's no such measure code as MN, so I'm inserting a new code. Okay, so we are done. We have inserted and updated in our source tables. Now we want the same to be reflecting in our target without any duplicates or without any issue. Okay, so let me go to the pipeline and hit this debug. Okay, so now we can see with the help of this activity name, we can see that incremental load is going on right now. Okay, so if we see the input of this, we can see what is the source query. It is select these columns from this table where updated date is greater than this value. Okay, so this is the concept of benchmark value that we implemented in our last video. Okay, so it is only taking incremental record with the help of this where clause. Okay, So here if we click on this specs icon, you can see the number of rows written is 1. Okay, so for each table we have only updated one record, right? Today and right now, before this run, we inserted and updated one record for each of the tables, right? So only those records, I mean only one record per table is getting copied right now. Okay, so now we see the last copy data that is loading from ADLS to dedicated SQL pool has failed. So what is the error? The error is value of property keys is an unexpected type list. Okay, so let me click on this input. Here we have selected Upsert option, and what is the key columns we have given? It is coming from the from our control table, right? So these are present in our string format, and the same is getting populated here, like the key column is in the string format, but actually this key column expects the column name to be coming as the item of array. Instead of string, we need to convert it to array. Okay, and here you can see interim schema name, as we have provided a schema dynamically. So it is taking a temporary schema to perform the upsert. Okay, so now what we need to change is this key column needs to be present in the array format. So let me go here, and instead of using @item dot key column, we will use array function. Array, inside this we are going to use this item dot key column. Okay, now let me debug the pipeline again. Now if we see this copy data 2, let me check the input of this. So now if you see, this key column is coming as the array. Okay, this is the only change we did in this run. So let's see if this works. So it is still in progress. Let's wait for this to complete. So we can see this copy data 2 underscore incremental is completed. Okay, so as I told, this is coming as the array. Okay, and now if we see this specs icon, so here you can see there is something called interim row written. So basically in the background it is using some internal table to perform the comparison between source and sync in order to check if the record is existing or it is a new record. Okay, so it is using that interim schema to do that, and then it is writing that particular row. So here the row written is 1. Okay, so this pipeline execution has been completed. Now let's check in the dedicated SQL pool. We are able to see these 3 newly changed records or not. Okay, so let me go to the sync and let me one by one check the data. Okay, so here there will be something called sales representative 2. Here you can see that. Okay, this is auto incremental or identity column, so we don't need to rely on this. And this particular column is in the newly inserted column, and the modified date is also changed. I mean it is inserted with, that is in sync with the source. Okay, similarly for sales.salesperson, we should be able to see the updated record and without any duplicates. Okay, so row grid should be ending with C3, and this should be the last modified date. Let me check the data here. So we can see this particular row has been updated, the row grid has been updated to C3, and the last modified date is also the latest one, which is in sync with the source. So earlier in our previous video, when we didn't update this, when we didn't implement this upsert concept, we could see this particular row which was updated in the source was creating duplicate. Okay, there were 2 rows with this business entity 276. So now it is not the case. Now it has been merged with this row has been merged with the earlier data, and we are seeing the updated data. Okay, now similarly for unit measure, we need to check MN as the unit measure code, and this test 1 is coming as the name or not. Okay, let me run this and we will check. Yeah, here you can see this is the new record test1 mn. Okay, now let's go to the control table, and we will also check this benchmark value has been updated after the pipeline run or not. Okay, let's wait. Yeah, so you can see all these benchmark values has been updated to the latest maximum of those modified date. Okay, so we are good with this upsert concept. Now I want to show you what happens if there are composite key present in the key column. So instead of only one column in the key column, we will update this with let me remove this. We will update with multiple columns. Okay, so let me check the source. Wait a second. Yeah, so instead of contact type ID, we will have the combination of contact type ID and name for this first table. Let me do the same. Let me copy this contact type ID comma name, right? Yeah, for which table? Contact type table. Okay, so similarly for salesperson, I am going to add territory ID as well. Okay, sorry. Okay, business ID and territory ID for salesperson. Okay, now for production.unit measure, I'm going to add unit measure and name. Okay, unit measure code and name for unit measure table, unit measure code and name. So these will be the composite keys. Okay, so our key column is updated to multiple columns. Okay, now if we run this pipeline, will it work or not? For that, let me create another incremental record. Let me add this representative 3, and let me add today's date. Let me modify it to C4. Okay, and this we will keep it as, suppose, QW and test2. Okay, so let me create these incremental records. Okay, so done. Now let me run the pipeline, and we will check if the upsert is going to work with the help of composite key or not. Okay, so let's run. So the copy data 2 is in progress. Let's see the input of this. Here you can see how this key column is coming. It is coming as the array, but it is treating this business entity comma territory as single item of the array. It is not taking two different columns as two different items of the array. Okay, so let's see if it works or not. So it failed, right? Let me check the error. It says SQL upsert key column, this column does not exist in the table. Okay, so this error is expected because there is no such column called business entity comma territory ID, right? So these are the combination of columns, so it should be treated as different columns. So for that we need to change it to instead of how it is coming is, let me write it down. It is coming as business entity ID. The array is coming like this, right? Comma territory ID. So instead of this, how we want it to be coming, like it should be like this. Okay, so basically we need to split this value to two different values in the array. Okay, so basically we want to split it into two different columns. So for that we will use a split function. Okay, so let me go to here and let me check what a split function does. Okay, so let me hover over it. So you can see split function will take a semicolon b semicolon c as the array. So let me hover over it, And you can see what a split function does. It will take string as the input, and on the basis of one delimiter we will convert it to item of arrays. So basically what it will do is, if we give split of this value, okay, if we give split of this, then it will change it to this particular value. Okay, so let me I mean, we don't even need to use array function, because it will automatically give the output as array. You can see the split function returns the output as array, right? It is converting a, b, c into different values inside one array. Okay, so instead of array we can use split, or maybe we can keep this array also, and inside that we can use split function. Okay, and how we are splitting this? We are going to split this by comma separating delimiter, because we have stored here with the help of comma. Okay, now let me run this. Now the copy data 2 is in progress. Let me check the input of this. Now you can see each of the columns are coming separately as separate item of the array. Okay, so let's see if it works. So copy activity is completed for all the three tables. Let me go to the dedicated SQL pool, and we will see if the newly updated or inserted record is coming or not. So we should be able to see sales representative 3 in the first table. Let me check one by one. So we can see sales representative 3 with today's date 26/6. Okay, now similarly for sales.salesperson, this row grid should be updated to C4, and this should be the modified date. Let me check the same. So we can see there are no duplicates of this 276, and this has been updated to C4 at the end, and last modified date is also updated. Now similarly for production.unit measure, we should see QW value. Let me check the same. Yeah, so this is coming as expected. Now the pipeline execution is completed, so we can also see benchmark value should be updated to 26. Okay, now let me check the same. Yeah, so these are also coming as expected. So what we concluded is, if we want to use composite key, that is the combination of multiple keys in the key column, so we need to split it with the help of split function. Now suppose if we were not doing it dynamically for multiple tables, if we would have used it only single table, then we could have directly selected the key columns instead of giving it like a parameterized or a dynamic expression. We could have selected multiple key columns. It would automatically take the different columns as separate item of the array. Okay, for that we don't need to bother, but since we are doing it for multiple tables, so we applied this concept and we used the split function. So we are good with this. So this is what I wanted to cover as a part of Upsert technique. So yeah, let me go to the presentation again. So we have already done the practical session, and we concluded that Upsert does not work with NVarchar max data types. We need to change the value to a fixed length column. Okay, so that's it guys. So I hope you like this video, and please stay tuned and hit like option, and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't done it yet. So thank you so much.